One. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Inside Movies Galore. I'm your host, David Strege, and we are continuing our film journey into into some of our choice picks from ourselves, which is pretty much what we did this month. So, Jake, why don't you tell us what the movie is for tonight? I'm excited.
Okay, well, tonight we're discussing Katsuhiro Ôtomo's 1988 film Akira, which was at the time one of the most expensive anime ever produced, and it certainly is one of the ones that put it on the world map. And it's very interesting. It was a joint venture between quite a number. Basically you had Toho was the main distributor with Bandai handling the home distribution, but among the others, the animators behind it were a who's who: Gainax, Kyoto Animation, Piero, Studio Dean, just and so forth. They definitely assembled a big team there, and we'll get into the synopsis here in a moment, but first, go ahead and see what everyone's initial take on this. I guess we'll start with you, Dave. Is this your first watch for you, or?
This is, in fact, probably just a second watch for me. I couldn't even find my copy in all these boxes, so I had to download it myself. But I know I've got the Steelbook around here somewhere.
Oh.
Not the Blu-ray one, but the DVD Steelbook.
Right.
But I saw it back when I saw Lily Cats, which apparently Sci-Fi Channel was doing an anime thing every week or so, and they were doing an Akira marathon. So it's like I saw a slew of animations in that era of 90s anime domination over the Sci-Fi Channel. So, and I thought it was a weird mess at the time. And I still think it's kind of a weird mess. It's kind of a mesh between everything. But having gone back and seen the first Lupin, I see similarities in the first Lupin and this one just a little bit in the creature design, and because of the whatever creature that thing is, it kind of reminded me of Lily Cats in a way. So it's kind of like. I'm in the middle of what I think on it.
Okay. All right. Dustin, how about you?
Well, I first saw this movie a few years ago. I'm trying to remember what I was doing. I think someone just recommended it to me, and it's like, oh yeah, I haven't seen that. But after I'd seen it, I did recognize a bunch of things from it that have ended up in other TV shows or movies or whatever, which we can talk about a little bit later. I didn't quite understand it at first. It's a very elaborate, complicated sci-fi story, but it's a pretty good movie. It just may not be the best thing if you can't give it your absolute full attention.
All right. I partially agree on that. Brandon?
Actually, I agree with Dave on my first viewing, because I think I was first introduced to this particular one on the Sci-Fi Channel during their anime. I got to see a lot of commercials with the clown gang in it being referenced. And my first ever viewing of it was only a partial viewing, which was at the end. And it kind of turned me off to wanting to see the whole thing for a while. The ending still bothers me to this day. I think I saw it for the first time for the full time. I think I got it for $5 at Walmart when they were doing an anime classics. They had that and the first volume of Hellsing and a couple others in the early 2000s. and finally said, I think I'll watch the whole thing. And I've upgraded since, of course, to the Steelbook, which has the DVD and the Blu-ray. More bang for your buck.
I think I saw that at Best Buy, huh?
But
right.
it was pretty interesting impression. Horrific first impression, actually, for me.
Well, I have to admit, this is one I can almost guarantee that I have Brandon to thank for this one, but I cannot for the life of me remember the circumstances. Did you show it to me or just lend it to me and say you have to watch this? I can't remember.
I know it was one of those that I felt like was a have to watch because of the importance it was to anime being regarded as a accepted medium in America.
Right. So I remember it was relatively early in my anime experience, but not one of the first. If it had been one of the first, I probably would have been. It would not have gone over well. And honestly, what's that? It would not have put me. No, it probably would have been more like Ghost in the Shell in terms of my initial reaction. But in general, the film is almost exactly the kind of movie that I am not drawn to. You got dystopia and the horrible graphic elements of that last act and all the the Mad Max kind of road fury punk sort of thing. I'm kind of like, nah, not my favorite cup of tea. And the first time I saw the film, I was like, eh. And I honestly cannot remember if these two watches were my second and third or third and fourth views. I don't know. But I will say it's a movie that improves with repeat viewing. I agree with Dustin that there's a lot you can miss. And there's a lot that when you go back and watch it, it falls more into place, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff there. At first, on the surface level, it does come off as just a cheap late 80s sci-fi action film, and that goes batshit crazy at the end. But when you watch it again and again, it comes back. And so basically, and one other little note on my experience is that I almost saw it in the theater, and I was very disappointed. But it was one of those things where I had a last-minute offer to make some money, and it was like, work, movie, I hate choosing. But maybe one day I'll get to see it there. But at any rate, so the plot summary per ANN is in the year 2019, which honestly I forgot it was set in 2019. So if I had known that, I thought that was hilarious. Okay, so in the year 2019, 31 years have passed since the outbreak of World War III. In Neo-Tokyo, all authority is waging a never-ending struggle against the underground that virtually rules the shattered city. A top-secret child with amazing powers of the mines breaks free from custody and accidentally gets a motorcycle gang involved in the project. The incident triggers psychic powers within one of the members, Tetsuo, and he is taken by the army and experimented on. His mind has been warped and is now on the path of war, exacting revenge on the society that once called him weak. Yeah, that's a pretty good summary. The gang, of course, the gang leader is Kaneda, and I think this may be one of the things you referenced, Dustin, like his biker jacket and bike have become like one of the most iconic images in anime, and I've seen them referenced repeatedly.
I don't know.
Projects.
I don't know if Akira came first or Yu Yu Hakusho came first, but in the Gateway Saga, a lot of the villains in the Gateway Saga are like basically a bunch of teen punks and other assorted people that came together. And there's a character called the Sniper. His jacket looks a lot like Kaneda's jacket.
Wasn't Hakusho mid-90s?
I think it was very late 80s, very early 90s.
Well,
Okay.
then Akira's
So with
definitely
88,
before.
it could have been. I don't actually know, but
I think
looking at the character designs, it just reminded me of like a lot of those guys.
Right. And
I
from
think
what I've
Akira's
seen
84.
I think
Isn't
from
it?
what I've seen of Hakusho, you're right. Like, and also a lot of the characters' designs were fairly typical for the era.
Mhm.
Like, the sci-fi films. Like, I've seen a couple from that time, Venus Wars, and a couple of the others, and they're kind of in the same ballpark-ish. So, and then you've got them. You've got there's this group of rebels that involves this girl Kay and this dude named Ryu, and they're the ones that actually broke the child out of captivity. And then you've got the colonel who kind of runs the military arm, and in the doctor working with him. And then all the sleazy politicians who come into play in one point or another. You got all these different factions, all these different, it's and that was one of the things I noticed on repeat viewing is how much the film kind of has to get into about a commentary on bureaucracy and politics and all that stuff that I didn't really notice the first time I saw it. But yeah, that's kind of fun. But anyone have a particular something they want to run with? A plot element I overlooked?
I just looked it up though. Yu Yu Hakusho was mid 90s, so 94, 95.
Okay.
This is 88. So, and the manga is what I was thinking of, which was earlier in the 80s. But yeah, that was one thing. I just thought, I'd look that up real quick.
They really do look like a very similar anime style. I mean, it's kind of that older style of anime, which was somehow like extremely detailed compared to at least the ones I've seen now.
Right.
Like it's very realistic.
And from what I've seen,
bloody.
From what I've seen of Otomo's work, he has a consistent art style himself across his works. His other feature that I've seen was Steamboy, which I really, really liked that one. And then he did one of the short films in the Memories film, which was a great anthology film. But yeah, I feel like each one, the art style is fairly consistent. So it was typical of its time, but it was also vintage Otomo. So it's kind of, so that works.
The late 80s, early 90s was a very peculiar time for anime. It was especially anime released in America because a lot of the perception was, well, Americans want as much sex and violence as humanly possible. And some of the most graphic anime, with the exception of Gantz, was released in probably the late 80s, early 90s.
Well, a lot of that probably was due to the success of Akira. I mean... Yeah,
that's what I said. I want to say that was probably where it was, that perception that that's the only thing Americans want, sex and violence.
I remember I used to watch Comedy Central like late at night. Around what was it? Early 2000s, very late 90s. And I remember seeing like an infomercial for you could buy like a bunch of like random anime series, and the guy would come on like, "This ain't no Mickey Mouse, this is anime," and then it's like uncensored like explosions of blood and like nudity, and it's like, what the hell is going on?
Right.
It was marketed like that.
But unlike Ninja Scroll, this one had a point.
Yeah, fuck you, Ninja Scroll, whatever the hell you are.
One could say, unlike Ghost in the Shell, oddly enough, not the series, the original movie, but that one also had the plot line. It really reminded me of a more entertaining version of Blade Runner.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and actually, it probably owed a lot to Blade Runner. But I'll admit, the more entertaining part, this may be blasphemous to some people, but I have never enjoyed Blade Runner.
It's long.
Yeah, oh God. Yeah, the new one was more enjoyable, but it was still kind of tedious.
I have the like 5 disc Blu-ray set or whatever, and it's like,
Wow.
I have to watch this entire thing. It's like I have to see Blade Runner something like 10 times to get through all the content on that disc.
Well,
It's
at
like,
least it's not. At least it doesn't take 5 discs to get through the cut of the film. I hope.
No, it's like several different cuts, and then it seems like each one has like 1 or 2 commentaries. So it's like, oh my god. I mean,
All right.
if I don't like it by the end of that,
Right.
we know we can stop trying.
Oh yeah, did we give the spoiler warning?
Oh, we never really did. No, spoiler warning.
I think everybody knows at this point. It's maybe a little silly for us to do a spoiler warning sometimes, because anybody who listens to us for a while, you know, we're
It's a polite thing to do.
we're talking. Well, we always talk about like the plot points and the surprises. So I
Right.
mean, it's kind of, it feels like it should be a gimme that things are going to be spoiled in our show. You know what I mean?
So basically, yeah, speaking of, we did like again the basic rundown of the plot, but like, so were there any particular elements or points that anyone really wanted to flesh out that they thought would be real good focus on, or?
Well, I mean, there's really like 2 major plot points.
Yeah.
The political one and the other, which was kind of well, they're both attached to Akira, but then there's that one with the biker gang that reflects on Tetsuo.
Right. So basically, I guess we should do a little bit of a world synopsis. Again, this is set in this year, but it actually doesn't seem too futuristic. It definitely seems
1988.
Yeah, I mean, it really. Well, my point is, like, it almost feels like with a twist of fate, it could be 2019. You know what I mean? Like, Japan is reeling from very unpopular tax policy. They're reeling from that previous war that had destroyed Tokyo 30 years ago. Their lawlessness is rampant. You know, you got these biker gangs fighting in the streets instead of being in school. You got all this kind of stuff, and then again, the politicians are the one politician who seems like he's on the right side ends up dying in a gutter with all his briefcase full of money flapping in the wind because he keeled over a heart attack. And then you got the military dude who you kind of almost empathize with in the end, but to get there, he's been the antagonist the whole time and ends up staging a coup against the government. I mean, you got all these shifting factions and all this, and it actually was kind of cool to when I paid more attention to it. I was like, okay, I can get into this. But where it really unravels is when Tetsuo's powers get away from him, and that's when it gets kind of.
I had to look up a lot on that plot point just to get a better understanding as to, okay, why the heck is this whole crap going down at the end?
Well, according to this legend of Akira, Akira is like some kind of a godlike spirit, or something like that, and it's like it was an unnatural power that was born inside their friend Tetsuo. I mean, it was created inside of him, and it wasn't there before it. It was created inside of him because of that thing that escaped.
No, I think they actually do point out in the show. I think it was more that it was there, but he had never known about it or had access to it, and it kind of was triggered by
that was how they
contact with the psychic kids.
Yeah.
The one psychic said that there is something of it inside all of us.
Right.
It just matters you use it.
It was pointed out in one, I think it was the manga, that they considered it it was the next step of evolution. And there were a few kids who were that next step, which were the ones there. but the human body was unable to contain that, which was what happened to him. And Akira himself was one of
Right.
these children who was really powerful, but
Mhm.
got put down, and then apparently
Right.
chopped up into many, many pieces and put into jars,
Right.
just to be safe.
Because no harm, no problem, no harm could come of keeping him all together in one place under cryo freeze. Nothing could possibly go wrong.
The kidneys will
Got him.
attack you.
He'll just take a host and he'll just stay inside that host forever.
Right. So I guess then, do we want to move on to character then?
Sure.
All right.
I mean, I
So-
certainly didn't understand what the heck was going on. A lot of the times it's like, okay, so wait, now we're doing something else? What's going on? It's kind of my attempt to follow the plot. Both that time and this time. Which, when I first saw it, I only saw the Japanese one. Like, today was the first time I saw the dub, which, not as helpful as I'd hoped for the plot.
I actually watched the dub for the first time today too, and it was not bad. I expected
good
worse.
dub.
Yeah, but it didn't. Yeah, you didn't really add much because honestly, Pioneer produced. Well, the version I have, both the dub and the subtitles were produced by Pioneer, and they did about the same. They changed some words, but not a lot. The apparently, much like the Lupin film that we did a couple weeks back, this one originally was released here with a dub by Streamline Entertainment, and once again, that one got chucked and replaced with a new one. And although I think, Brandon, you said you had a newer edition, does yours have the Streamline dub?
I mean, mine's the same dub I've always listened to, so.
Because I think one of the newer releases brought back the Streamline dub as a bonus feature. I could be wrong, but
I did not notice that. I'll have to take a look at the disc and get back with y'all on that.
Right.
But yeah, definitely.
Anyway,
not a bad dub, though, I would think, overall.
Yeah,
definitely.
not bad.
Especially for Pioneer.
Right. Now, I've heard horror stories of some of their stuff. But I think supposedly they spent like $1 million. Was it $1 million on redoing the whole thing, redubbing and the upgrade? They spent a lot on it.
It's a pretty high budget for something like that.
Yeah, I don't remember how much it was, but it was a lot. But anyway, so character-wise, your main characters again, you got Shotaro Kaneda, who is the leader of this little gang of high school punks, that biker gang. Tetsuo Shima is his longtime friend and boon companion and kind of the runt of the group who always gets kind of picked on. And then you got Kai and a couple of other, Yamagata and a couple others are in their group. And they're kind of at war with this little group called the Clowns. And during a little skirmish with them, they run into, was it Takashi? I guess number 26 is the boy. They're known by numbers, so you got 26, 25, and 27 are the ones who have the powers already.
Not a number.
Side note, the Joker gang is like the Joker gang from Batman Beyond. If anybody saw that and is wondering, what the heck we're talking about. I kind of wonder if the Joker gang in Batman Beyond was some kind of callback to Akira, because it takes place in the future, and there seem to be a handful of things here and there.
It could well be. Actually, there was one thing I was wondering about as a callback. And Brandon, that one clip you love to play over and over and over again from the Clerks series?
Is
it safe? Did you not think that was a callback to this?
Well, Is It Safe is a callback to Jaws, but
well, no, just the way the Colonel, that one point in the movie where the Colonel says, "Is it safe?" Like he's very, very vocal, like, "Is it safe?" But yeah, you're right. It probably is a Jaws callback, but I could see Kevin Smith pulling from both at the same time. I could see that. But
it does have both English ones. So if you get that new that newer release, you can have the newer 2001 dub or the original English dub.
So I think the 2001 was the pioneer. So that, yeah, they might mean the streamline. Who knows? And then, of course, you got the colonel, who's, like I said, the lead of the military forces. You've got Kei and Ryu and a couple others who, like I said, are the revolutionaries. And, of course, Kaneda sees Kei in the police station and is instantly smitten, and he kind of gets her out of Hawk, and he ends up kind of running with the revolutionaries just out of flirtation with her at first.
Yeah.
And that's what's that?
He said. I said he's got to follow the romance.
Right. Those are most of the main characters. You got Kaori's this kind of mousy girl who's in love with Tetsuo. I think Nezu was the Weasley politician that was working with Ryu. But yeah. So anyone really jump out that anyone wanted to comment particularly on?
Tetsuo always bothered me. I never liked the character at the beginning. I still don't like the character today. Though he does I don't know why, but he always reminded me of Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z.
I can see that. I can definitely see that.
I drew him with like the weird high hairline.
Right.
Though this does predate Dragon Ball Z.
Right.
And not necessarily Dragon Ball. It'd be about
it does not predate Dragon Ball, but Vegeta was definitely later. So who knows? That might be an influence there. And like there's a couple points where he uses his powers where he almost looks like he's gone Saiyan. It's kind of. But yeah, that was. I agree. I never liked Tetsuo. I mean, he's a little brat. You feel for him a little bit because everyone's always picked on him, but
at first,
yeah. But I mean, as soon as he gets his power, he just,
You start at first. You start feeling sorry for him until he blows up the doctors.
Yeah.
Although I have to say, one of my the most interesting parts is where his toys start to come alive. That was a dream-like sequence.
Yeah, it was kind of creepy.
That was almost a horror element right there.
Yeah. There were definitely some horror elements sprinkled throughout with this one.
There were so many weird moments. It was kind of hard to. It all hits you kind of fast. So I was a little. I didn't quite notice as much as I probably would have normally. It's like, wait, what the hell's going on? It's like, oh, what is that? And it's like, oh, I don't have time to worry about that anymore. Now what's happening?
I felt like it was Tetsuo was off the drugs kind of a moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Could be.
I'm fine as my arm assimilates into this chair. And it's like, oh.
Yeah. The true off the drugs moment. I was going to say, we see later on what happens when he goes off his meds. It's pretty rough.
Yeah, he mutates into that like blob entity thing, which they actually used it in an episode of South Park a long time ago.
Yeah.
If anyone remembers that, the Trapper Keeper.
But
I think I saw that one.
It's like it assimilates Rosie O'Donnell, and that's how they beat it because it becomes sick.
I might have seen that one. It sounds familiar.
It's an old one. Maybe season 5, 6, something like that.
Right.
Maybe 7.
I mean, that is supposed to be as he was transforming into his ultimate form at the time. His powers were transforming into a form that could hold the powers, which is why it took kind of a fetal
shape for a little while. Yeah.
Right.
There was surprisingly little that I noticed about most of the characters. It seems like they just, aside from Tetsuo, like we don't really get anybody's like internal monologue. Well, maybe some for Kaneda, but
Mhm.
nobody particularly stood out to me, which is kind of strange, in my opinion, at least for my movie watching habits.
Hmm.
I mean, the last time that happened was like Rogue One, and
Hmm.
good lord, I hated that movie.
Well, I definitely felt that way the first time I saw this movie, and again, that's one of the reasons why it kind of washed over me the first time. I was kind of like, because yeah, most of the characters didn't really do it.
Pop out.
Yeah, they did better this time, but it still wasn't extraordinary.
And there was a lot going on that you thought to yourself, oh, darn, I should probably read the series this was based off of to figure it out.
It's a pretty thick book, isn't it?
Which is weird because a lot of anime movies are like that if they're based on the source material. Many of them and many of the series are meant to try and get you to read the source material.
Right.
But Akira was action, adventure, it was that kind of thing that, and sci-fi, which was really digging into what Americans were wanting at the time. I mean, it really does reflect, if you think about it, late 80s, early 90s, that was the time when we had all the post-apocalyptic films coming out.
Oh, yeah.
All the movies.
There were quite a few.
I mean, I would have liked to have known more about like the Psychic Kids program, because that was vague, I think is the right word.
Yeah, I mean, you get a little bit, but it is kind of thinly addressed here. And I don't know how much of that was. Apparently, Ôtomo was reluctant to adapt his manga, and then he decided, maybe because they gave him the budget to, because if this film had been done on a lesser budget, it would have definitely been even more
dense.
Well, probably not quite what. Well, it certainly wouldn't have been as popular, I think. That's very likely, at least. But
well, there definitely was a lot going on in this film in the background. I mean, like we have mentioned, there was the anti-politics and the politics. Because the anti-politics was when the army guy decided to go against, the government, and to me that's anti-political. Like throwing over the government.
Right.
Well, it was definitely a coup. That was for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we should note that they attempted to arrest him first, but they said you'll be stripped of your.
Wanted to work with them. It's just they thought, oh, you're too much of a loose cannon. We need some patsy to blame for our failures. So guess what? Tag, you're it.
Yep. Because that usually works so well.
Except I'm too A-team for you. Let's go commando.
I always consider the city to be a character in this. I mean, the concept, and I don't think it was Neo Tokyo in this, but it might as well be, because Neo Tokyo essentially was a concept utilized throughout the 80s and 90s of this kind of dystopian future of Japan.
Well, it seems to be a popular
Wicked
theme.
City, or like Wicked City, or gosh,
I wonder if Neo
Doom Megalopolis.
I wonder if Neo was almost a precursor to the Matrix as well, because that was the name of Neo, and that was set in the future.
What, you mean Neo Tokyo?
Yeah, Neo Tokyo, using Neo as the name reference.
I think it was more just the general use of Neo is new. Although I did wonder if the bicolor capsule on the back of Kaneda's jacket, I wondered if that was borrowed for the Matrix. It could be wrong, but I was kind of wondering, because it's like a red and blue capsule, isn't it? Like, I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I thought it was red and white.
I thought I remembered it being yellow.
I don't know. A lot of it has to do with the coloring, because like I know with the newer editions they went back and refreshed the color, and I think it's redder. Because in the edition that I have, it's kind of washed out. Like his jacket and bike are almost more of an orange. They're kind of a little washed out, and I think they've recolored it with the newer editions. But I
The
don't know.
restoration work is amazing in the
Yeah.
version I watched.
That's something that I remember. I remember when Akira came out, a lot of people were saying that the colors of the animation were fantastic, and it like if you were to go and see it on shrooms or something like that, I mean, it was definitely a druggie's paradise for a sense of euphoric.
That may have been the
That'd be a
Gainax
bad
influence.
That'd be a bad trip if you were doing LSD and watching that scene
Yes,
with the toys and
yes,
stuff like that.
that would be. It would be.
That reminds me of my favorite story from the most recent episode of this other podcast I listened to. They were talking about how they're doing a European tour, and they're talking about visiting Amsterdam, and the main guy in the show got recognized a couple times, and like the first time he was like, yeah, okay, a little awkward, but it's me. And then the second time he was just starting to like really feel like whatever he took, and the person was like, hey, excuse me, are you Will Menaker? And he was just like, am I? No, I don't think so. Where? But
isn't he dead?
but getting back to Neo Tokyo, like Neo Tokyo is referenced a lot in different like 80s style things. Like I started listening to like synthwave music, which is kind of like it's modern music, but it's kind of like retro style. And a lot of the fan made videos for that stuff use clips from Akira, and even shows up in like album titles, song titles. Like Akira is the vibe of Akira is all over that whole musical genre. That's even one of my favorite songs by this guy called Perturbator. It's hard to pronounce. I don't know. Europe, blame that. And the song is called Neo Tokyo. Like I run to that, like it's almost designed for the scenes where they're driving their bikes down like that huge highway. The pacing.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Neo Tokyo the name of in Evangelion, or am I remembering that wrong?
It could be, actually.
Because I know Eva was another one. There seemed to be a thing in Japan of we're going to build a city on top of the remains of Tokyo. I don't know how many anime I've seen where that is the case.
They really want to
so
like
many.
tear down Tokyo. Like I don't get it.
Well, not only
like it's like a given. Tokyo has to be destroyed at some point in like every
Well,
storyline.
then again, in American productions, how many times have we destroyed New York, DC, LA?
I mean, we've torn it up, but we haven't razed them to the ground.
Godzilla and Gamera always destroyed something.
Like, have you not seen Independence Day? I think they were raised to the ground in that one.
Well, yeah, I mean, that one counts, but it's not like 84 different anime series based on that premise.
Right.
Yeah,
but,
it was, but it is a character in and of itself, the city. And because it's the crime, it's the corruption, it's the decay, and yet there is still the hope. All of that wrapped up into one old decrepit character with cybernetic implants on to keep it alive.
You know what I was thinking with the three psychics or whatnot? I was thinking like the three almost eyeless witches like in Greek mythology.
The Fates?
Yeah, the Fates. I was kind of thinking along that line because for some reason, to me, these three people were watching the lives of all and deciding when to interject and when not to, and that's what the Fates always did in stories.
Or the Norns, depending on who you ask.
Yeah.
That was a thing in that old Hercules TV show, like the Disney animated Hercules TV show, which nobody else remembers. There was one episode where he went to like the Norse land or whatever, and he ran into the Fates there, and they were like, we're the Norns, and he's like, no, you're not. You're moonlighting, aren't you? It's like, we're getting out of here, Sister Fates. I mean Norns. It's like, that's how I know that.
That goes to a band that I know, Amon or Moth, with the favorite horns.
I do think there's definitely something to that idea, because they were kind of just watching, and they would contribute, especially since one of them was a precog and was having all these visions and stuff. That sounds like a good thought.
Another 3 that I remember was in Minority Report.
Yes, yeah, I remember that.
Nice.
And those were precogs that ran that thing. So to me, it's like.
And actually, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say they were all, of course, classmates at the beginning, with Akira and Tetsuo.
And Spielberg is well known as a geek and big consumer of culture. And he does do a lot of callbacks to other stuff, so it wouldn't surprise me if Akira influenced Minority Report. And I know for a fact that he slipped the bike into Ready Player One. That was actually the one that the girl, what was her name, was riding in the race. Artemis was riding in the race at the beginning.
You knew he saw it in theaters when it came out.
Oh yeah, But it was actually one of the few changes from the novel that I was kind of like, okay, that's kind of cool. I like that. But we kind of started to touch on, so I guess we should go ahead and move further into, I guess, the production aspects, like the animation design, the
spectacular animation. Holy crap!
Right.
Like, it looks amazing. Like, maybe its strongest feature is just like the quality of like what's going on. Like, they were very serious about telling this story, and the art style really reflects that.
Well, the production design was amazing. It was just all a production masterpiece. That's probably the reason why Akira is so well known.
To me, it's like Picasso of animation, in a sense, because you have all this like different collage of scenery that is intermixed. I mean, you've got the Neo Tokyo against the Neo Punk, with that sort of West Side Story going on with the bikers. To me, because Tetsuo's woman kind of reminds me of that young mouse looking girl that was into the lead of
Gowdy.
Yeah,
like Tetsuo's girlfriend.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think that girl was actually Kaneda's girlfriend. I think he was just hitting on her, like in every scene they had together, and she was like, "What are you doing?" So I don't know if I'd characterize.
She was kind of going with it by the end, though.
Yeah, it was just like at first it was kind of like.
I think she was more into him than he into her.
I think we got that reversed.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
He was going around like, should we tell people that we're boyfriend girlfriend? Is that too much?
And she's like, "What's your name? Who are you?"
She warmed up to him gradually, and then in the end, you could tell that maybe she had a little thing for him by the end of it, but it took until the end.
Of course, by the end, everyone else she knew was dead, so that.
Yeah, well, he killed her before we could find out.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, and I agree. The production aspects, like I said, I know apparently one of the people or one of the groups involved was Gainax, which was they have done some really crazy stuff over the years, including Eva. Kyo Annie is one of my absolute favorite production companies, and their body motion and like their character animation is phenomenal. Then you got, I think Piero and Studio Dean were both involved in Castle Cagliostro. So again, there
Yeah.
was some that's part of that, similarity there. And then of course, Toho binding it all together. They've been behind some big things over the years, and yeah, that
I mean,
was.
I really do think that the production value, and I actually consider the big anime boom in America that happened is solely linked to Akira and maybe at a lesser extent Ghost in the Shell as a follow-up because of the extreme production values showing that they can go beyond stuff that many of us had even come to expect from animation. Because I mean, what was the peak of animation we knew as Americans at the time? Disney. But
Not to
this
mention
is
that.
beyond.
Not to mention that Akira came out the year before The Little Mermaid, so for all intents and purposes, Disney was still in the dark ages to a lot of people. So it was good timing in a lot of ways.
People had never really seen animation quite like that before, and
Right.
shoot, even in Japan, that was quite spectacular.
I
At
remember.
the time.
I mean, I remember at the time that this came out that they were almost had the same reaction to what was that a movie? They had the same reaction to another movie that I'm trying to think of, where they thought it was like the history of the Indians, and it's got like 3 or 4 more coming out soon. Avatar.
Oh, yeah, soon, quote unquote. Yeah. So.
I know.
Right.
It's still in the mix of whether it's coming out, because each year it seems like it gets further and further away.
Although, actually, one could say that about the American version of Akira, because that's currently set for 2021 release, but it's had so many reincarnations. But right now, they've got Ôtomo on board as executive producer, written and directed by Taika Waititi and produced by Leo DiCaprio.
What?
That's a pretty awesome team there. I'm interested, but who knows where that's going to go, if it'll ever happen.
If it ever happens, I'd be interested only because of DiCaprio being involved.
I don't know. YTT is awesome. He is awesome. But at any rate, and did anyone have any particular notes on the music? I have to admit, this was one where the music always was kind of for me. Like it's effective, but
there wasn't much
music.
music, but the music that's there, like I thought was really cool. Like with just kind of like the beats and like the chanting. Like I really enjoyed the music. That might have been my highlight in terms of
the parts with the chanting were pretty cool. I'll admit that. Yeah, it was and it was an interesting choice to end it with that old recording of Tokyo Shushan Boy. That was kind of a really weird stinger at the end of the credits. But yeah. What else for production aspects is I guess you can't really do too much with makeup special effects with an animated film, but
Well, I thought that their sound mixing was good, and
yeah,
I mean, because if you think about it, all the sound effects they matched and they landed pretty well and effectively. All the explosions, all of the many running parts, they managed to flow that together very well. I wasn't lost at any means in the. I wasn't lost at all to the whole of it, which sometimes you can be, unfortunately, when it comes to animated type features, because they're not always that well done with their sound.
Oh, and one thing about the sound that I did read about this one that's kind of odd is that apparently they did the animation, the dubbing was done American style, which what's the usual order? Is it? I think it's in America they dub first and then animate, or is it the other way around? I always forget. But I know they do it opposite in Japan. But this one they actually reversed the usual practice, which may have helped its popularity here, I'm sure. But yeah. Trying to think anything else on the production aspects. If we don't have any more, does anyone want to go on into favorite scenes, I guess?
Actually, I have two for scenes. I have a least favorite, which I want to mention.
Okay.
Because it just is iconic. And I do have a favorite. My favorite's pretty easy because my favorite is the just the kind of nightmare scene where he's coming in and all of the toys are coming to life and that sort of psychic hallucination. I just thought that was well put together, right out of a horror movie. Earlier on, that would have freaked me out if I had seen it earlier in life. The last scene where Akira does his, not Akira, but where Tetsuo does his transformation, that is probably my least favorite scene, but also one of the more iconic scenes or memorable scenes for the movie, because I can guarantee you anybody who's seen Akira will remember that that portion of it quite well.
Yeah. Dave?
Well, my favorite scene, I have to agree with Brandon, is that nightmarish scene where Tetsuo is just waking up. He's in the hospital, and all of a sudden, the bear that he flipped over onto the floor just kind of walks past him with this car and whatever the fuck that other thing was, and it's like every sugar plums were dancing in his head, and the Nutcracker was alive. So
right.
But then it took like the gigantic bear and turned it into the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man or something like that,
Yeah.
But my least favorite scene, which I think we could get into least favorite scenes on if we really wanted to, was the part where they were. They had ripped the clothes off a Gouda. I mean, that wasn't, I mean, she really had really done nothing wrong, So to me, I kind of felt bad for her. So.
Yeah, it was sad, like what happened to Goudy, and like I don't want to spoil it because we've already spoiled kind of a lot, but it's pretty gross.
Yeah. How about you, Dustin?
My favorite scene? It's kind of tough to nail down. I mean, I think I like the finale just because it's so like over the top and like what is happening. So, although that flashback sequence where you actually get to see, good lord, I forgot his name. I forgot Tetsuo's name. You get to see some of Tetsuo's like history with Kaneda. Right. That was interesting. That was pretty interesting because it's some of the little bits of character insight that we get. So I don't know. I think my favorite scene probably is just the finale because we get like that music with it too.
You know what's interesting is that Tetsuo is also the name of a Japanese trilogy of horror films that I know. So I wonder if those films had an influence from this movie.
Probably.
Could be.
On some level. I mean, this was such like a huge from what I understand, this was such a huge thing when it came out that anybody creative would have been interested in seeing it and been like, oh, and then like stuff from it would have appeared everywhere, which
Right.
seems to have been the case.
Actually, I just want to mention one random thing about the dub real quick, because of Dustin, you had a little slip up there. I was very impressed with Pioneer that Kaneda was called Kaneda, because it's so easy for an American to read that as Canada. It's so easy, and I'm like,
Yeah,
I
I caught
can't
myself.
believe Pioneer did not.
I caught myself doing that. I was like, damn.
Yeah, but I could not believe that they got it right. I was like, oh, that's nice. And then of course,
They tried.
and then of course, Akira is one of the most mispronounced words in anime fandom. There's so many. But at any rate, for me, for favorites, I'm not sure I have a clear lead. I agree that scene with the toys is pretty awesome. And there were a few like particular character development scenes that I kind of liked. Like I liked the scene in the police station, actually. I thought that was kind of fun. And there were, a couple little bits here and there. My least favorite definitely has to be the big transformation thing, particularly the part involving Kaori. Felt sorry for her there, but it did get a little gruesome at times. For the most part, otherwise, the film, despite the fact that it's very bloody, it's not that gory. So it's good. It's like, I have no problem with that. If it's really bloody and not that gory, I'm okay with it, but it's definitely bloody.
Isn't Fist of the North Star or Mad Bull 88, which there's a scene in Mad Bull where they're out of weaponry and he says, no, we're not. A cop always comes prepared. Takes off his pants and it turns out he's got like a bushel of grenades. Just his underwear.
Yes, he just. Where should I keep these? Oh, my pants. Sure. Oh man. Okay. Well, let me think here. If there were any other big notes I had, I don't recall anything. Oh, one thing I did want to note that I've read a lot about this, but I've not really been able to nail down like an official visual confirmation of this. But Akira is apparently the one and only anime and one of only three animated films to get the Criterion treatment, and it apparently got a limited Laserdisc treatment. Like, from what I can tell, not even a VHS release. And it's like, that's just really freaking weird.
Got the Annie Hall treatment.
I've been saying for Annie Hall's another Laserdisc only. But
and I guess they have Criterion has the rights to it, probably.
Well, no, they don't. And that's the thing, is Criterion. And when we did our list of ones that need a Criterion release, we included a lot of anime. We specifically did not include Disney. And it's occurred to me that it may be the reason we did not include Disney is because of their obsession with the vault. The mouse has his vault. Yeah. And Criterion has it in their mission statement that when they release something, they keep it in print. So it could have been that the Japanese production company said, we'd rather not. We'll take it back. And that's very unfortunate to think that might be keeping them from exploring anime. Because
it makes sense because it had that re-release, which is very recent. I think it was this past year that re-release came out.
But like Akira and Perfect Blue and
I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind if Perfect Blue came out as a Criterion or something like that.
But yeah, but of course the other two, we covered one just a couple weeks ago, which was Fantastic Mr. Fox, and the other one was Watership Down. So they really need to step up their game with animation.
That's right. They did come out with a Watership Down Criterion, didn't they?
Yep.
Animation is a little. I really feel like animation is considered a whipping boy, and even in this day and age, a lot of animation is still considered, oh well, it's just for children. Even in this day and age, and I feel really strongly that it should not be considered as such. That it should be taken seriously, or as seriously as its live action counterpart.
Especially because you can't watch Akira and go, "Oh, that's just for kids."
Oh, that's Disney right there. Yeah, Disney's Akira.
Oh my god! For kids. Yes, Akira and Perfect Blue, and let's see, Paprika, and all those lovely ones.
But yeah, that's why presenting animation like this one and the Lupin the Third movie that we covered, it's just important to actually present this stuff. Just because it's good to let people know that animation can be something just as serious or just as good as some of these other films.
All right. So, any other final thoughts? Anyone have any other notes on release that we overlooked, or weird random side stories, or?
I think I told all my side stories. I mean, it's good. Like, go see it. Like, it's on Hulu right now, both the sub and the dub. So if you've got Hulu, feel free to check it out. So, I mean, I am not really an anime fan. Like, I generally don't like anime, and I could enjoy this. So that tells you something about the quality.
Very good.
Well,
and
I've gotten into a lot to some anime here and there. I guess I have to say that I actually kind of like this because of how weird it goes. It has no
I like it too.
It has no random rhyme or reason, and that's what I like about it. I mean, it really doesn't. I mean, it goes one direction, it goes another. It kind of brings you in a labyrinth of things, and it brings up a lot of emotions on different sides. So it's kind of a weird concoction of beautifulness,
Right. Good way to put it, I guess. Yeah, it's like I said, this one definitely has grown on me. I really didn't like it at first, but being a movie geek, I like to not be dismissive of things. I like to give them a try. And then I've said before, it's one of the fun things about this group is I try things I wouldn't have otherwise. But sometimes I'll see something and have a very adverse reaction and be assured that, oh, no, you need to try it again.
Well,
and that was like me with my first reaction with Ghost in the Shell, was I was bored to tears and thought it was this tedious piece of what the heck is this? And I eventually went back and found that, yeah, it is kind of boring and tedious, but it's beautiful. And it did lead to a really awesome TV series. I remember in high school, my dad introduced me to The Graduate, and I hated it. And then I came back a few years later. I'm like, oh, man, I love this movie. So sometimes you just got to get the timing. What's that?
I still hate The Graduate.
All right. Well, anyway, I guess if everyone's had their final, do we want to do our final send off then? I guess, well, Dustin, you want to lead
I'll
off?
go first because I actually got to go and after my little wrap up here, guys.
Okay.
I'm Dustin, also known as the Crypt of Horrors, here on YouTube and Twitter. So feel free to follow me in both of those places. So my channel is for horror collecting and just kind of anything else related to horror and movies. So my horror collection is on Instagram at DHRHunter. So follow me and badger me to post more stuff because laziness. And I think that's probably about it for me. So,
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
like, share, and subscribe to all of our stuff.
All right.
And with that, I will leave you guys.
All right. Good night.
Night.
All right, Brandon.
Well, of course, I am Septum Sen of Septum Sen versus the World. We are a physical media tribute page where we talk about the wonders and beauty of physical media, as well as top tens, movie reviews, and such. Usually limited to what we have physically. Of course, we have a number of wonderful top tens that we have, our top 15s, depending, that we have. We are maybe next week going to try and record for the next top 10 list that we have. It all depends on time wise, but that top 10 would be a continuation of earlier lists about anime that kind of inspired us and got us in, whereas our first ones are kind of our beginnings into the other. This is more of a how we really got into it. So these are going to be very interesting lists. Whether it'll be next week or the week after, it really depends on other factors. But hopefully we'll get that in.
All right. And I'm Jake. I also frequently guest on Septum Sin versus the World as Kotobuki Jake. And like I said, we have that one top 10 to look forward to. It's going to be really cool. And then in about a month from now-ish, we'll have our favorite 10 anime movies. Will Akira make our list for that? Who knows? We'll find out. But there's definitely a lot of movies being watched in this next month. Some of them very good. And actually, last night I watched one of the ones that got horribly overlooked because of the prejudice against animation, which was Your Name. So at any rate, I have my own channel as well, Kotobuki Jake, which is more focused on nature and the natural world. I've been too hung up on unnaturals lately to record a lot of videos. I need to hit a better balance there, but it's I'll update occasionally. And in the meantime, do the collecting and commenting as well, and just having fun when I get to on this channel. And I'll hand it over to you, Dave, to finish us off.
Alrighty, and my name is David Striggy, and I am the regular host for this podcast. But as you know, every single one of us has a hand in moving this conversation along, and we ultimately enjoy our film journeys. So we on a different channel, Delusions of Grandeur, I put my film reviews, and eventually we'll be getting this podcast out to other avenues of the podcast arena. But now this was the end of this month's themes, correct?
Well, actually, we still have Katie's left, which would
Okay.
be Night Riders.
Okay,
Is it Night Riders? Is that right?
Yeah,
It's a Romero film.
Night Riders, George A. Romero's Night Riders, which we will be going on about next week. So stay tuned for that. Now, this coming week, I have 2 interviews with 2 different directors. One being Joe Sherlock, and another being Brad Sykes. So stay tuned for those. One will be live, and one will surface, and I'll let you figure out which one that will be. So, in any case, stay tuned for more exciting stuff on our channel. Like, share, and subscribe, and have a good evening, folks. Say good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.